Hello, my name is Marco, and I've been working with Aboriginal families for the last 2.5 years. I'm going to talk about the vision statement, and I'm going to read the work that I did as follows. There is no secret that the Australian Aboriginal communities have been overrepresented for years on the welfare and justice systems. Poor housing, lack of education, poor health, and difficulties to access services are just some of the most common issues experienced daily by the Aboriginal families. There is plenty of literature that proves that this overrepresentation of Aboriginal families in the child welfare system is due to profound socio-economic disparities, the westernization of the child welfare practice, and the compulsory reporting of suspected harm. All these factors are a continuation of the racism and erosion of Australian and Torres Strait Islander communities. As a society, we would like to think that the injustice and crime suffered by the Australian Aborigines are a thing from the past. However, sadly enough, there is still much overlasting pain across generations. For example, the removable children policy after colonization 200 years ago is still current, as the National Inquiry into the separation of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children from their families in 1997 confirmed. It was found that the subsequent removal of children is occurring in more than 1 in 3 cases of parents who were themselves removed as children. I need to see it long and Sefton by page 97. The Australian child protection legislation is aimed within the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child from 1989. Many of the principles of the Convention, along with the local policy frameworks, specify the how and when the services and interventions are to be delivered. By 2009, the National Child Protection Clearinghouse identified differences in the delivery of child protection services in all states and territories in accordance with their local needs. It was also found a similar guiding principle in several key areas, such as the best interest principle, a commitment to early intervention, the participation of children and young people in decision making, the provision of out-of-home care, culturally specific responses to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. These findings were the catalyst to develop the National Framework for Protecting Australia's Children, 2009 to 2020. The National Framework aims to deliver a substantial and sustained reduction in levels of child abuse and neglect over time. The National Framework is being implemented through a series of 3-year action plans. The first action plan from 2009 to 2012 focused on implementing partnership and reporting arrangements to underpin all further initiatives. The second action plan is focused on working together across government and non-government sectors. It will also emphasize the development of local partnership for local solutions, recognizing that a one-size-fits-all approach does not work across Australia's diverse communities, and that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander and cultural, linguistically diverse families and communities need strategies that are sensitive to their needs and circumstances. The current situation for many Aboriginal families is due to a very complex series of factors, such as the history of colonization, the dispossession of land, forced child removal, racism, and discrimination. All of these have resulted in the so-called intergenerational trauma. Every day, Indigenous kids and their families are dealing with legal, political, and economical disadvantage of a system which ignores or misunderstands their cultural background. Despite of being considered a first world economy and all the funding surged to close the gap, the current Australian policies and politics with regard Indigenous child welfare continue to undermine their cultural identity. Interestingly, while almost all indigenous communities around the planet had suffered the same fate of colonialism for decades, not all the Aboriginal people around the globe are stuck in the same complex circumstances that the Australian indigenous population is. For example, in my home country, Chile, like in many other countries in South America, over the last 4 decades, the Aboriginal community has been included and slowly but sure their rights restated in the society as a large. Of course, there is still a lot of work to do to reach a state of equality between the indigenous and non-indigenous population. But clearly, the current situation of the South American Aboriginal communities within a third world social scheme seems to be far better than the current situation for the Aboriginal population in Australia. In my opinion, full recognition of the Aboriginal identity needs to be honestly and intrinsically respected to assist with the healing process and to promote self-determination for the indigenous families and communities at large. These are the bases to provide a brighter future for all children, where social justice, their human rights and their cultural needs are totally met. Clearly, all of this with the aim to stop what is called historical trauma. As social workers, we must embrace and enforce a change towards a system that stops, instead of repeating the cycles of trauma and removal present with the Aboriginal communities since invasion. It is fundamental for this shift to happen that the governmental funding is aimed to prevention rather than cure. Clearly, we need supportive and preventative services that assist in building the capacity of families to care for their children and allow children to grow safe within a strong connection to country. For thousands of years, within their communities and cultural traditions, Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islander children have grown up safe, well, and cared for in their families. We need more professional Aboriginal people working with Aboriginal families. We need to be open to collaborate and to empower communities. We also need to make sure that the access to services are equal for the whole population. In terms of the government approach, laws, policies and practice need to be culturally safe and responsive to the needs of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children and their families. These are the major changes that the Australian society could assist to prevent another generation of children to be disposed of their natural rights. As workers, we need to create and perform with a new approach, where a mix of base evidence tactics and a spiritual respect when working with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families is honestly present. These new methods need to adapt the current policies to the Aboriginal culture. We cannot continue working with the First Nation people as we were with the white Australians. When working with children, best practice must genuinely include the children's opinion, that from their parents and their close family. However, it's still a general view that children can make decisions on their own life. Furthermore, in the child protection practice, listening to the children can be seen as disruptive and unnecessary to be able to make a correct decision within the professional expertise, making the best interest of the children a matter of policy rather than a real opportunity given to the kids to have a real voice. For example, Ramsden in 2013 explained, a child's cognitive, linguistic, social and psychological competencies influence their ability to understand interview questions, reflect on their personal experience, and express their thoughts and feelings in a way that the interviewer can understand. Page 27. Gibson in 2012, however, argues that in a supportive and encouraging environment, children can provide crucial information as an adult can. I believe that this new approach needs to be more spiritual, focused on the human experience and putting back the social in social work. Brixman 2015 advocates a re-emphasis on empathy and emotion in child protection practice instead of improved instrumental forms of practice. And personally, I agree with this statement. For the political leaders of the neoliberal market and to the owners of the big multinationals, these ideas are impossible, unrealistic and plain unachievable. Because we need the money, we need to comply with the guide that sets all the rules. To get funding for our programs, we are obliged by policies to tick boxes, putting all the people in the same page, without respecting differences. We are so trapped in this dynamic that we are very often forget the purpose of our work. It seems that this new approach might be closer to the human nature. Many studies have proved the value of the unique Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander way to educate and to care for the kids, which is based on a strong connection to the land. And this connection to the land is fundamental to create the change we need. The Australian Association of Social Workers stated, social workers will advocate for and promote the protection of the natural environment in recognition of its fundamental importance to the future of human society. In the last 50 years, the advances in technology are unprecedented. There is no doubt that these advances are very useful and make the daily living routine an easier task. Unfortunately, in the current social environment, digital technologies have taken over the most basic human interactions. It seems that technology and its connectiveness has made humans more unconnected and isolated than ever before. Nowadays, it's common to hear what is happening at the other end of the world and not being able to see what's happening next door. We all are a screen touch away from anything, and at the same time so far from our neighbor. We are so digitally connected that we do not need to talk to each other anymore. Why to do so if we can text? These amazing advances in technology are slowly dragging us apart from our own nature. Our kids are so close to the USA way of life that they have no idea where they came from and what really represents to be an Aboriginal Australian. We are destroying the planet. We spend, we use, we waste, and we trash, showing no respect for what nature has given to us. Thus, we do not need a change. We need a revolution. We need to come back to the roots of humanity, the same basics that the First Nation people knew for centuries. This is what Mother Nature is asking from us. We must learn from the ancient tribes their connection with the land and their loved ones, because by helping others, we help ourselves. In conclusion, after decades of systemic oppression, the First Nation peoples are today in the most disadvantaged position ever. To change this, we need to start a new process of recognizing the Aboriginal culture and their customs, that differentiates tribes and their nations and their land, and of course, make the social work more human and less automated. While these tasks seem to be far from reality, we have the duty of dream them, to fulfill them. To finalize, just two phrases I would like to share. One from Walt Disney, who said, "All our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them." And a very well-known sentence for all of us from John Lennon, "You might say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one." Let's start the revolution.